Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. You're walking down a bustling street in Tokyo, right? You're surrounded by these incredible neon lights, just taking in the whole vibe of the city. And out of nowhere, a local woman walks right up and approaches you. Now, if you're a foreign guy, your first reaction is probably going to be, wait, what? But what's really happening beneath the surface here? Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to decode a very specific, absolutely fascinating cultural anomaly. We're looking at a dating dynamic in Japan that might actually leave you asking one very important question about your sudden stroke of good luck.
And that brings us directly to the core of our explainer. It's this dramatic dichotomy. Are you incredibly lucky, or are you prey? I know it sounds intense, right? But it honestly perfectly captures the two completely different realities of what might be going down when that woman walks up to you. So to understand why this is such a high-stakes scenario and to figure out which side of the coin you might actually land on, we first need to lay down some basic ground rules about dating culture in Japan.
So let's establish our cultural baseline. I'm going to slow down here to lock in a key piece of local vocabulary for us: Nanpa. In Japanese culture, Nanpa is basically the standard term for the act of a guy approaching a girl. It's that traditional dynamic, you know. A man initiates contact, maybe strikes up a conversation on the street and tries to get a date. That is the expected, standard script. But, like we established right at the start, we are not talking about the expected script today. We're talking about a significant anomaly. Here's a really vital piece of context from our source material that makes this whole thing so interesting. Japanese women are generally way less likely to make the first move. If you compare that to a lot of Western countries where women initiating contact or making the first move is pretty common and socially expected, it's a huge difference. And this cultural contrast is exactly why a woman approaching a man in Japan is such a massive anomaly. It goes completely against the grain of that standard Nanpa dynamic we just talked about.
Because it breaks those standard rules so drastically, the culture literally had to invent a brand new concept to define it. I like to call this the linguistic flip. Basically, when a society encounters a rare reversal of its unspoken rules, it generates new language just to make sense of the anomaly. So, we're about to completely flip the cultural script that we just laid out. If Nanpa is the expected standard of guys approaching girls, what in the world happens when the roles are totally reversed?
Enter Gyaku Nan. This is the term you're going to want to remember. Gyaku Nan happens when a Japanese girl approaches a guy first. But, and this is a big but, notice this specific caveat here. This is a term especially used when she approaches a foreign guy. So this isn't just about women universally approaching men. It has this very specific cultural flavor that frequently involves targeting foreigners. Meaning, if you're a foreign man in Japan and a woman initiates contact, you are absolutely not experiencing Nanpa. You are smack in the middle of a Gyaku Nan.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates how language works in real time. Just look at the root word here. Gyaku literally translates to reverse. It is the direct, literal opposite of standard Nanpa. It's, well, reverse picking up. The very fact that they had to bolt the word reverse onto the front of the concept just shows how totally backwards this situation is compared to the everyday cultural norm. It's basically a massive linguistic red flag telling you that something highly unusual is taking place right in front of you.
Okay, so how do you actually spot this happening in the wild? What are the literal mechanics of a Gyaku Nan? Well, our source material outlines the exact behaviors to watch out for. The absolute classic moves are her asking for your Line app info, which, by the way, is the dominant messaging app over in Japan, or just straight up asking for your phone number. If she is the one closing the distance and initiating that exchange of contact info, boom, a Gyaku Nan is officially in progress. But here's where we circle back to the mystery we started with.
Why exactly is she doing it? This brings us to the two true motivations behind this behavior. You really have to ask yourself, is it genuine love or is she a Gaijin Hunter? This is where you kind of need a bit of local street smarts. On the one hand, sure, there is a very good chance she is just genuinely interested in you. Maybe you caught her eye, she decided to be brave, and she went for it. But on the other hand, there's a completely different motivation at play. A motivation that turns you from a super lucky guy into, well, that prey we mentioned earlier. Our sources lay this out so perfectly, noting that while there's a very good chance she's interested, there's an equally real chance she's one of those Gaijin hunters. Now, Gaijin is the Japanese word for foreigner. And yes, Japan literally has a specific cultural trope and dedicated vocabulary for girls who specifically go out to hunt and pick up foreign guys. For these women, your foreigner status itself is the actual objective. They aren't necessarily approaching you for who you are. They might just be approaching you because you fit a specific demographic they're trying to target.
Which leaves us with a pretty lingering thought to wrap up our explainer today. If approached in Japan, will you know if you're the prize or the prey?
I mean, you know the vocabulary now. You've got the standard Nanpa, the anomaly of the Gyaku Nan, and the reality of the Gaijin Hunter. You understand the cultural rarity of a Japanese woman making the first move, but in that split second, when she walks right up and asks for your line app info, you're going to have to figure it out for yourself. Are you just incredibly lucky to have found genuine interest, or are you simply the catch of the day? Just keep that in mind the next time you find yourself wandering the streets of Tokyo. Thanks for exploring this fascinating cultural dynamic with me.